Today on the channel, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Let me show you my ideal way to write. This is one of my current projects. This happens to be in Scrivener, but Scrivener is not the point of this talk. And in fact, we're going to be talking about another app entirely. When I am at my most free, when I'm writing and the words are really flowing, it often comes because I've gotten rid of tons of distractions from my writing routine. And in this case, it's coming from a full screen mode. I don't have any menu items. I don't have any background. I don't have anything to clutter up my screen, possibly give me notifications, distract me in any number of ways. It's just the words. And that allows me to really focus on the writing itself, the story, the characters, the situation that they're in, and things really come quickly to me when I'm in that mode. Now, admittedly, it's still tough to get into that mode of writing, but you're helped greatly if you can simplify your interface as much as possible. And that's where a new app called BYOK, Bring Your Own Keyboard, comes into play. BYOK bills itself as a distraction-free writing suite. They ran a Kickstarter last year for a streamlined device, a dedicated writing device where you can bring your own keyboard, BYOK, and it removes as many distractions as possible and tries to help you focus only on the writing. I hope to review the BYOK device in the coming months, but today I'm going to be reviewing the app itself, its mission, its pricing, and whether it lives up to the hype, so stick around. I do want to let you know that BYOK reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in reviewing the app and the device. I obviously said yes, but that in no way colors my impression of the app or eventually the device. I want to give you my honest impressions, pass along the pros and cons as I see them, and talk about who might benefit from an app like BYOK and eventually the device itself. Okay, so let's start by going to their webpage. This is the BYOK.io main page. Their opening offerings are going to be a single dedicated writing device and an app that goes along with it. Before I get into those themselves, the device and the app, let me just go to About. And the About shows something about the company itself, the flagship device that they ran a Kickstarter for last year, and then also the app. This term can get a little bit overloaded as we're talking about this because it does refer to the company, the device, and the app, but they are rooted in this philosophy of trying to take away all distractions and keep writing to its most basic form. That's why the device was created, the Kickstarter was run, and it's the purpose of the app as well, which seems to be a companion, a close companion to the device. But BYOK, the company, is trying to create an environment for writers in which they can really just focus on the writing and to get better writing out at a faster pace than you could otherwise. All right, so let's look at the device itself, and I'm not spending much time here because I don't have it yet. And basically, this is a dedicated writing device that allows you to connect any kind of keyboard, hence the BYOK, and you can connect a keyboard wirelessly via Bluetooth, or you can connect it via USB-C port. And this is akin to the dedicated writing devices that have those small LCD screens and that allow you to focus on the writing similar to this, but they have built-in keyboards. And so the differentiator here is largely being able to bring your own keyboards that you really like, because the keyboards that come with those other devices are probably relatively poor, or you may just have certain preferences for your keyboards and you want to use it to help you write better, to feel more natural about writing in general. And so the device allows you to do that. As I understand it, the device isn't available yet. They are rolling out the app currently. It's available now. And they did provide me with a coupon code, Bradley40, Bradley40, for a 40% discount on a 1-year membership. And I'll show you what's included in that price a little bit later. Let me just hit accessories really quickly. You can see this is a very new company. They plan to have accessories like stands that you can lift up your BYOK device so it's more at eye level. They're not available just yet, just like the device. So that should be coming fairly soon. There's also a link to the Kickstarter, and you can look at the videos on both the website and the Kickstarter to get a better idea of what the device is about. But now let's swing over to the app itself. This is what the app looks like when you first log in. You'll have to create an account, and that's free. They do have a free tier along with priced tiers, but this is the interface that you get. And all of your work is going to be handled in this main part of the screen. And then there's a drawer at the bottom, which has all of the different tools that are available to you. And so if I just click on that, it comes up with whatever I'm currently focused on. But let me go to Home in the bottom left here. And this is the home of the current project that I'm looking at. And so what I want to do now is go to an example project that they provide to give you a sense of what it can do. And to get there, you open the drawer and you go to this bottom right person icon, and then you can go to projects. You can also see some account information, get support, report bugs, that sort of thing. But let me go to projects. So when you create your account initially, you'll be provided with this example project. If I just click on that, it will focus on that. And it's not totally obvious that we're now in that project, but we are. If I now go down to the drawer, I can see there are different folders like text, wiki, grid, cards, etc. And the trash as well. So if you put anything in the trash, it's going to go there, and you can clear the trash just like any normal trash function. But if I double click on text, it will go into that folder, and I can see that down in the bottom here. So we have a breadcrumb trail that shows us where we are in the context of the current project that we're viewing. And so just keep in mind that everything that you're viewing is in reference to the project that you've chosen from that My Projects screen. But if I double click on any of these, it will bring that up. So just double click here, it'll bring that up in the top section. If I click in that text, that drawer will close. And so we can start to see how streamlined this is. Real simplified interface, everything that we need for the most part in terms of higher level functionality, creating text to work on will be in that drawer. The actual text is worked on in this main screen, and there are a couple of things that I can do. For example, this text toolbar shows normal formatting options like bold, italics, underline. We can also change the color of text and change the highlighting, the background. Now, I can't change this one because this is read-only. This is their example project. It's just trying to get our feet wet. But let me show you one other bit of functionality. If I go back to the drawer and I now double-click on this novel chapter, it will come up in a second column automatically. So this, again, is kind of the default view. You can have two columns. You don't have to. If you want to go back to a single column, you can just go and close out a column with this X over here, and I'm back to the single column mode. And then if I bring up this blog post, for example, that will come up like normal. Now, if you already have two things up on the screen and you click on something new, it will ask you if you want to replace the left column or the right column. And so maybe I want to replace that blog post with the novel chapter that I just selected. And you can see here this toolbar remained after I opened it, so I can just close that to get rid of it. And now again, I'm in this mode where I can work on either column as needed, close them. I can also swap the two columns with this little icon here. I can also increase or decrease the size of the text with these plus and minus icons here. So if I want it to be a little bit bigger in text, the size of the font, I click the plus. If I want it smaller, just click minus here. And so that's the basic interface for text. Now, let me go back to the home screen. I have these wikis, grids, cards, and outline. So let me just go in here and I'll show you some of these. And again, when I bring them up, it'll ask me if I want to do the left or the right column. And in this case, it brings up a wiki of different things that I can create at will. So if I wanted to add something about my project, maybe it's a fantasy novel and you want to create a wiki for your own reference and maybe even fans of the series so they can see some of the inside baseball about your project. And so you can create main entries with sub-entries and put detailed information under each of those. Let me go back to the home and show the grid. And here, for example, we might have chapter notes. So I'll put that on the right side in this case. And so I can create something where I'm outlining the chapters and notating different information that I want to include in that chapter. Maybe I have a list of things I want to hit for each chapter. And so I can put those down in a grid spreadsheet style format to keep it more organized, more clean, that sort of thing. All right, let me go back to the home again and we'll take a look at cards. Same deal here. If I click on any of these, it's going to ask me where I want to put it. And so these cards are very focused on high-level style information. It just has a title and then a more detailed description of what that thing, it could be a scene in your book, it could be something else, what that's meant to do. And so you can add things and move them around as needed. So that's a real quick view of the different features, but let me go to a project that we can actually change. So I'll go here to projects again, and I'll go to my new book, for example. And by the way, for each of these projects, you can right click here and change the color of these if you want to. You just right click, pick a color. All right, so let's go into that project. And again, once we go into the project, it's kind of at the top and we haven't selected anything yet. So if I go into the drawer again, I have created some of these folders already, just for ease of use. So I might have a manuscript. So if I go in here, I currently have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And that's because that's how I do things in Scrivener. This is slightly problematic as far as I can see in this app. And the reason I say that is because if I want to export any of this to some other program, now again, if you have a BYOK device, you can transfer those automatically. I think that will happen in automatic fashion behind the scenes and you won't have to do much of anything. But if you want to export this and give it to somebody else in RTF or PDF format, you go into this toolbar and on the far right, there's this download icon. So if I click on that, I can do plain text, RTF, which is the equivalent of Word. There's no .doc or .docx format available currently. There's a markdown format PDF document. Those are your 4 choices right now. And so what this means is if I separate everything into chapters, chapter 1, 2, 3, all the way to mine, which are like 80 some chapters long, these big epic fantasies, I'd have to do that separately for each chapter. I don't know of a way currently to do multiple chapters at once. I think the basic philosophy of BYOK is that if you're going to be using this long-term to create a full novel, you'll be doing it in a single document and then maybe exporting it. And that's not the way I currently work. Other people may feel differently. You may have a different workflow. And also, you may be using this only for drafting purposes and then moving it out of BYOK into something else. And so I think one of the strengths of this tool is going to be getting the words out and not necessarily being good at structure and exporting things and maybe being a refining tool. I think its strengths lie on the front end of a writing project, maybe not so much on the back end. And I'll cover that a bit in the pros and cons later on. I will also mention that BYOK is adding new features all the time, and so that may be on their roadmap. I don't know at this point, but as it stands, I think that's one of the limitations. But as we had before, we can now add text into this document. It's not read-only, it's our document. So we could say Ryan went to the palace and ... And so at this point, I could select text and I could change the color if I want to. I could make this red. So we can see now that it's red. I can select it again. I could change the background to yellow. So now it looks super ugly. I did Command Z to undo those 2 commands, and now it's back to white with a normal background. Now, another thing that I'll note is that I don't have a way, as far as I can tell, to change the text font. I happen to like serif fonts. I like Palatino, that's my favorite font, but I want something serif for my purposes, and there isn't one. In the app, at least. On the device, in the Kickstarter video, it mentioned that you can choose one of 3 fonts, and I suspect that's at least one serif font and maybe Courier and some non-serif font like Arial or something. I really want that in my apps in general. I could live without it if I needed to. Again, if I was using this as a very streamlined drafting mechanism where I bring the app or the device somewhere, just write, get things out, and then bring it back and pull it into, say, Scrivener or whatever tool of choice I'm using for my longer-term efforts for a project, then maybe it's fine. But I just wanted to mention that limitation. So along with the kind of basic formatting options, you can also have the basic styles, paragraph, headings, bulleted list, numbered list. There's also justification, left, right, center, and fully justified. And then you can change this to a narrow style or a wider style or the default, which is kind of a medium. And then you can create links as well in your documents. So that's all of the toolbar, the formatting toolbar options. Anywhere in the project at the top or in any of the folders that you create, you can click on this plus here and it will then present you with other options. Now, this will be dictated a bit by your pricing level. So if you're in the free plan, you can add text and probably folders, but you won't have the ability to add things like wiki, cards, grid, and outline. Those are reserved for the paid tiers, and I'll show you that pricing in a little bit. But let's create a new text just for example. So it creates this new document and it puts you in the context of creating a new title for that. So maybe I want to notate some things about the magic in my world. So I'll just create that. And then again, I can double click on that. If there's already one thing up, it'll put it in the other column. If there are 2 things up, again, if I click, it will ask me where I want to go. So let me show you how streamlined this app can get. So there's a dark and a light mode that you can just toggle, but there's also this focus mode. And there's full screen. And finally, the word count. So the word count shows how many words you have in that current project. So right now I have just 7 words. If I add more, so that'll just count as you go and you can kind of see where you are. Let me go back here and I want to go to focus mode. So here we have that toolbar, we have the X, we have the title of this document, and we have the plus and minus. But in most writing situations, you're not going to care about that stuff. You're just going to be writing and focusing on the words themselves. And so if you go into that focus mode, it just gets rid of that stuff. And if we do add another document, that will be streamlined as well. We don't even have the divider between the two columns. If I turn off that focus mode again, I will see that divider between these two. And then if I go back into focus mode, it goes away. If I wanted to get rid of that column, I'd have to go back out of focus mode, get rid of it, and then go back into focus mode again. And then let me do full screen as well. So here we have a case where it's very streamlined, right? It's like I showed you in the beginning with the mode that I like to be in the most. And so BYOK, the web app, gives you that. And again, I could get rid of those words as well if I want it super duper streamlined. So just get rid of the word count, go back up here, and all I have is the drawer at the very bottom, and then whatever I have in the document. That's it. So I can stay in the writing and not be distracted by things like the menus and the notifications in the system trays of whatever you're using, PC or Mac. I can just stay super focused and write. That's what BYOK, the app, is trying to give you, and I think they achieved that. I think they get high marks in terms of trying to focus on your writing and keeping everything out. All right, so let me show you how to use the timer feature. And by the way, there are keyboard shortcuts for bringing up that drawer. On the Mac, it's Control Space, and there'll be some kind of equivalent on the PC. And so if I go under the stopwatch icon, it will come up with this interface, and you can add in increments of 5 minutes. So I can say 5, 10, 15, for example, and then I can hit play, and it will start the timer. And this goes to show just how much is changing. In the version that I had when I joined several days ago, it had a bar that would count down from, I can't remember, right to left. And it would show you essentially how close you were to finishing that timer. And I kind of like that, and I don't see it anymore. So I suspect that has been removed. But if you bring up the drawer again, either by clicking on it or by doing Control Space or the equivalent on PC, we can see that it's starting to fill. And now we've hit 14 minutes instead of 15 minutes. So you can check the timer at any time, and then it will alert you once you actually hit 0. So it is visible, and it's possible they removed that because it was clutter and got in the way, and they just wanted to keep things streamlined. So I could, again, go into the tools and go into focus mode and just keep things really streamlined. And when that timer hits, it's up and I can see how many words I've finished. And in the meantime, it's just very focused, very clutter-free. Let me go back to the BYOK main page and I'll show you the pricing for the app. So I can see there is a free level, which includes that text tool. So just straight writing, very little formatting involved with it. You can sync across different devices. And then there's this BYOK integration. So if you have the device, it will exchange text and other documents created in your projects automatically. And then there's a standard plan and monthly and annual. And so you can look at those. Again, if you're interested, you can use that code, the coupon code that I have, which is included below. That's Bradley40. And this gives you access to all the standard tools. You get a lower rate for the billing, that integration again, syncing and support. And then there is lifetime access as well. If this is something that you think you might really like long term, that might be worth it for you. And then down below, you can see what's included in the free plan versus the standard plan. So again, the text is included in both, but you don't get access to the wiki, the grid, the outline, the card stacks, and future tools. They are adding more as time goes on. So this is kind of a low watermark for BYOK. They will be adding things as time goes on. So you will be getting those when they come out if you go for something above the free tier. Okay, so let's talk about some pros and cons and then who I think this is for and maybe who it's not so much for. BYOK with their app aimed to have a streamlined way to write, and that's their main focus, and I think they've largely hit the mark. It may not work for absolutely everybody, but I think it's worth trying, especially with the free tier. Just give it a shot for a day or two, a week or two, and see if it works for you. And consider whether or not that'd be something that you want to use with a device like BYOK. So you'd have both eventually. I can't imagine a lot of people would use the app only by itself. It really starts to shine when it's used in conjunction with the device. The timer feature is really nice, and again, you can look at that as you go along and it'll alert you when it's done, helps keep you focused and moving on your work. It's nice to have that built-in dark mode and light mode, the full screen mode, having simplified tools in place for formatting and that sort of thing. It does have search capabilities, so you can look through various documents to find something that you're looking for. those different types if you're looking for a paid plan, including the outline, the wiki, the grids, and the cards, and future features is nice to have. And you can organize and rearrange your project as necessary. So let's talk about the cons. The full screen mode, even though it's useful, may not be as useful on really large screens. In my office, I have this gigantic monitor, and even normally wide monitors, you might find those columns are just too wide. In which case you might have to shrink your browser, and then you run the risk of having other things sort of interfere and encroach on your writing. You can mitigate that a bit with the width of the columns, but they may still be too far apart for your liking. You may want them to be centralized a little bit. So just having more controls over those, some column adjusters so you can pull that in a little bit might be helpful in the future. I just mentioned that you weren't able to control the size of the columns very easily, but as I'm looking around here, and let me go out of focus mode. If I go back into my writing, this is now sensitive, so I can change the size of the columns as I want to. I don't think it's maybe quite as configurable as I'd like. I'd actually like to be able to pull these ones in too to create shorter columns for a really wide screen, but that's starting to get a little nitpicky, so I'm not too worried about that. So it's nice to be able to change the size of these columns so that if you have something that's sort of reference material on one side and you're writing and focusing on the other side, you're able to do that. As far as I could tell, another con, there was no way to indent a paragraph, similar to how a page would look in a book. So first line indented by a ½ inch, everything else non-indented. I couldn't see a way to do that. The drawer is grid only. There's no way to show a complex structure in a tree-like format with different nodes that you can open and close. And I recognize that that's starting to add complexity to a project, and they probably made a conscious decision not to go that way. But at the same time, I have projects that are pretty complex, and I want that. I need that for everything I'm creating. Notating things about the world and the religion and the customs and the people. And that just gets complex. And being forced to have everything in a single folder, one level, and not being able to view that easily is somewhat problematic for me. I mentioned earlier that when we export, we are exporting a single document. And so it would be difficult for those who organize their novels into individual folders and documents, scenes, what have you, and then compile all that stuff together to use BYOK in a similar manner. I don't think that's possible at this point. I will mention too, in playing with the outline, so let me just bring up this one, I'll put it over here, I'll get rid of this other column. When you create an outline, it has 3 levels built in, and that appears to be all. So if you're creating something, it looks like it'll be a maximum of 3 levels deep. And that'll accommodate a good number of outlines, but in a lot of my projects, I go 4 or 5 levels deep for different reasons. And so it's a little bit limiting to have only 3 levels. I kind of wish it was just freeform and you could go however many levels deep you'd like. And so who is BYOK for, the app? Again, we'll get to the device eventually, but I think this is for people who are looking to streamline their writing process and perhaps focus very tightly on just the writing, the drafting in other words, and not so much maybe the editing, organizational, compiling process for other people to consume that writing. That I think is going to be best left to other tools. Those who want a simple interface again and to have it available anywhere they go via the web is a nice to have, and so that may work for you. Those who want a no-frills option for drafting, if you don't really care as much about getting super detailed about how things look early on, I mentioned the fonts and the indentation. If you're really just focusing on getting those words out and doing things elsewhere when the words are created, then this might be for you. Also, those looking to pair the BYOK device for those who don't have the device available at different times and just want to be able to get something down that will then sync back with their writing later on. Also, early adopters, people who want to support a young company like this that's doing something eager and with energy and hopefully creating something cool in the end. So who is it not for? I think those who have pretty complex writing needs may not find this to be a great match for them, especially where it comes to organizing your projects in a detailed manner, in a folder structure with scenes underneath them, so you can organize the writing itself and your reference material in a very detailed manner and easily accessible manner, so you have that tree structure available and can bring up anything you want at any time, maybe search a bit more easily, that sort of thing. Those who already have a solution for a simplified writing interface may not find this compelling enough to make a leap to it. Also, this is a web interface. Again, we're just talking about the app right now. And it's a thin interface and just doesn't have the same kind of power that you'll get with a dedicated application. And so for those who find that type of interface a little bit too simplified, too oversimplified, again, that's kind of their goal, but you may have needs for other things, other features to be available at all times, at any time, really. So it may not be a match for you in that case. I hope this gives you a good idea of what BYOK the app is all about and whether or not it's for you. If you're interested, don't forget to sign up for the free plan and just try it out. And if you're going to make the leap into a paid plan, don't forget the discount code, which is in the description below. As always, if you found this useful, I hope you'll like and share with other writers and writer groups especially. That really helps to grow the channel. I have a ton more videos planned, so be sure to hit subscribe to be notified when those come out. I hope to see you in the next one. Until then, dream big, stay positive, and keep writing. Peace, everyone.